Thank you, Mr. Bieber. I appreciate you being under time so that we can get to questions. We're going to start with Mr. Barrett for 6 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Barrett.
At Brookfield, when Brookfield's value increases, the value of stock options and deferred share units also increase. That's how these instruments work, correct?
Yes, when our share price increases, the value of those instruments do increase, yes.
And that basic reality doesn't change simply because those instruments would be placed in a blind trust. The value would still rise when the value of Brookfield rises, correct?
Yes.
So if someone holds Brookfield options and units in a blind trust or not, they personally benefit when Brookfield performs well. Isn't that right?
Anybody who holds those instruments, whether during employment or following employment, derives the benefit from those instruments. That's correct.
And any instrument can be sold, bought back, cash settled, or unwound in an instance where, for example, if Parliament required by law divestment by sale, that possibility exists, correct?
The Prime Minister would have certain instruments as part of our long-term incentive plans. There are certain instruments that are less liquid than others. I'm happy to get into the details of that if you wish.
I would, but the premise is what I need to settle, is that they can be sold, bought back, or cash settled, or unwound. It is possible, should it be a requirement. Is that correct?
Yes, it's possible.
Thank you. Long dated, they're long dated, so we get that. But that's generally how compensation contracts work. That's not some kind of unique, that's not something unique to Mr. Carney, since you brought him up.
Well, long term, yes. In some cases, exercisable in shorter horizons. In some cases, the ultimate value is received far into the future.
Can you explain briefly how stock options or deferred share units and notional long-term incentive plans work at Brookfield? What drives their value?
Yes, I'd be happy to, and I will try to be brief. Helpfully, all disclosure relating to Brookfield stock options and deferred share units is disclosed in detail in our public filings, so it's very much available. In a nutshell, stock options are rights to acquire shares of Brookfield at a certain price, and those exist and during their pendency are exercisable, subject to vesting, because when we award them, people take subject to vesting schedules. So even though you awarded them, they have to vest during the time that you were with Brookfield, and then exercisable for stock that can then be sold into the market. Deferred share units are slightly different. They also track the value of a Brookfield share, but they are not actually shares, and when they mature, they are paid out to the individual based on the value of the share at that time. They are the second component to some of our LTIP programs.
Are you able to give us approximate value range of options and deferred share units that Mr. Carney still holds?
As I said in my response letter, that's personal and private information, and that's not something that Brookfield is permitted to disclose to the committee.
Well, what I will say is that you enjoy parliamentary privilege while you're at this table, and this committee is not constrained in its ability to request information or documents. But I'll move on for the moment.
Okay.
Increases in Brookfield's performance increases the value of the instruments that Mark Carney still holds. So he makes more when Brookfield does better. Yes?
In relation to the stock options and deferred share units, yes, as the value of Brookfield increases, the value of those instruments increase. There are also carried interest entitlements that relate more specifically to funds that we manage.
So speaking of funds, the Global Transition Fund is one that Mr. Carney was directly involved in. Are you able to provide us with details of the investments that are inside it that drive the value of his position or those who hold a position in it?
Yes, so I believe you're referring to Brookfield Global Transition Fund 1, which was launched during the time that the Prime Minister was with Brookfield. And I can confirm that all of the investments made in that fund are contained in the annexure to the Commissioner's screen document that has been published.
Okay. We're going to have to come back to some of this, but my last question is, with the Prime Minister still holding compensation that rises with Brookfield's performance, how would you say that Canadians would be able to have confidence that blind trust and private screen are enough to protect the public interest when, as you agreed, when Brookfield does better, the Prime Minister is going to do better?
And that's a very fair question.
I need a quick response, and if you can you?
Well, I think it's based on whether or not the conflicts can be managed, and I'm happy to talk about that further.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Bieber. I want to ask you some questions about carried interest payments that you alluded to earlier. Mr. Carney's ethics disclosure indicates that he is entitled to carried interest payments, which are essentially future bonus pay from the Brookfield Transition Fund 1, which he helped set up. Mr. Carney also co-chaired the Brookfield Transition Fund 2 as well as the Catalytic Transition Fund. Is Mr. Carney entitled to carried interest payments in respect of those funds?
No, he's not. And the reason for that is we were in the process of setting up those funds when Mr. Carney decided to leave Brookfield to pursue the Liberal leadership. And we had not yet instituted any allocation of carry from those funds. Those funds had not yet been raised. When we talk about launching a fund, we're starting the marketing of that fund, and they had not yet reached a conclusion, even an initial closing of those funds, and therefore we hadn't allocated any carry. Had he stayed with Brookfield, he certainly would have been entitled to some.
Thank you for that. And of course, he is entitled to carried interest payments in respect of the first fund, Brookfield Transition Fund 1. I just want to confirm that that fund is registered in Bermuda.
Registered in Bermuda? Yes, I believe that one is.
And the Brookfield Transition Fund 2 is also registered in Bermuda?
I don't have that information at hand.
Well, I would note a March 26, 2025 CBC News report that indicates that the Ontario Business Registry indicates that the governing jurisdiction for the Brookfield Global Transition Fund 1 and the Brookfield Global Transition Fund 2 is Bermuda. I presume you're not disputing that.
I won't dispute that.
And and I would also just ask that the Catalytic Transition Fund you'll confirm is registered in the Cayman Islands.
I can take that away and make sure that I'm not misspeaking on which jurisdiction it's part of.
I think you know the answer to that. It's yes. So I want to ask you a little bit about the schedule of payments with respect to carried interest from the Brookfield Transition Fund 1. When does the fund mature?
Transition Fund 1 would have a maturity of 10 years plus a 2-year possible extension, which would take it to 2032 to 34, I believe. 2032
or 2034. So it would be at that time that the carried interest payments would be paid out.
Towards that. And I would say that regardless of where the fund is actually established, everything that I mentioned in relation to Madame Lapointe's question hold for everything in that fund.
Now, just in terms of what is in that fund, there are new investments in that fund, correct?
There are investments in that fund. They're not necessarily new.
But if there were new investments in that fund, that would increase the value of carried interest payments, would that potentially?
If additional capital were invested in that fund, it could, if they're good investments.
Okay. Now, Brookfield CEO Bruce Flatt was quoted in a National Post article dated March 15th, 2025, in which he described carried interest payments in the following way, quote, "Put simply, carried interest is our share of the profits realized on an entire fund subject to that fund exceeding a minimum target return for clients. If we meet fund expectations, we get 20% of the profits," close quote. So you would agree that that's an accurate characterization of how carried interest in respect to the fund works?
I think that's a fair summary. Subject to that, the subject to is a very significant part of how carried interest works.
Right. So Brookfield ideally would get 20% of the profits if the threshold had been met or exceeded. Now, in terms of carried interest payments to the managing partners, what is the range? What is the percent of that 20%?
Well, it completely ranges by fund. And
I'm asking with respect to the Brookfield Transition Fund 1.
Need a quick response, Mr. Bieber, please.
It's a proportion of the total that Brookfield is
I'm
entitled
asking
to.
what is that portion?
Okay. May have to come back to that, Mr.
Just to follow up on a few points, has Brookfield Global ever been criminally charged with anything like bribery, for example?
Charge? No.
Has there ever been an investigation for bribery against Brookfield Global Asset Management?
Nothing that has not been found to be completely false.
But were there charges?
There were no charges.
There was no investigation into bribery in Brazil?
There was, again, that was found to be completely false. And in fact, the person who was alleging is now in jail.
Okay. Is Brookfield registering investment funds to a bike shop in Bermuda good for Canada, and what impact does that have on the payment of taxes in Canada?
Look, as I've said before, first and foremost, we have businesses that do have presence in Bermuda, and those are part of an overall investment structure that allows investors to pool their capital in jurisdictions where we can achieve tax transparency so that businesses that we own can pay taxes in the jurisdictions in which those businesses operate, and then those after-tax proceeds can be delivered to investors in the jurisdictions where they are based and pay taxes there as well.
So your answer is that it's good for Canada to register funds to a bike shop in Bermuda?
I'm not passing judgment on what's good or not.
Okay.
I'm saying what these rules are implemented to achieve.
Are you able to provide us with a list of investments in the catalytic funds and the global transition funds 1 and 2? Is that something you're able to furnish the committee with?
The committee has the list of the investments in global transition 1. Global transition 2 and catalytic are irrelevant.
Are you able to provide us with a list of the investments in the 3 funds that I've mentioned?
I'd have to go back and check.
Check if you have them, or check if you'll do it?
I'll take it under advisement.
Well, I'd like the list. I'd like the list of the investments in the funds. How was the long-term performance pay structured when Mr. Carney was at Brookfield? Are you able to tell us what metrics determined that pay?
While he was an employee of Brookfield?
Yep.
Like every executive, Mr. Carney was entitled to a compensation package that was comprised of several components. he would have been entitled to a base salary, a short-term annual bonus that's generally expressed as a percentage of that salary, and then the long-term incentive plans that align all of our executives with our shareholders and our clients in both the funds and in the overall performance at Brookfield.
When Mr. Carney left Brookfield, did he retain his unvested interests on standard terms, or were any of his arrangements modified because he was entering public life?
He left on standard terms. He terminated his employment on January 16th.
Standard
he took
terms.
everything that was vested and departed.
Can you tell us what role Mr. Carney personally played in Brookfield securing financing from the Central Bank for the People's Republic of China?
I think you're referring to clients who have invested in our transition strategy, and that would have been the same as all of the senior executives associated with the transition fund.
In the past few months, have there been any decisions of the federal government, tax credits, policy measures that have increased the value of Brookfield businesses in which the Prime Minister still holds an interest? And if you have more than one example, just one example is fine.
I can't think of any.
So in November, Brookfield announced $100 billion in AI infrastructure expansion, $650 million in renewable power, and major U.S. nuclear activity through Westinghouse. Would you agree that government policy in these areas could increase the value of the Prime Minister's Brookfield-linked compensation?
That's a very tangential line to draw. It will all depend on whether this is good for nuclear. We believe is an incredibly important component.
Yeah,
to
I support
any
nuclear energy. I'm just wondering if
Okay.
it'll improve the Prime Minister's financial position personally.
There is no way to tell whether it will or will not.
Thank you.
Thank you. Monsieur Sally, 5 minutes, s'il vous plaît. Okay, so we're going to continue our second hour with Mr. Cooper for 6 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Bieber, I want to follow up on carried interest payments. I asked you about the proportion that those entitled to them would receive. You said there would be a range. I presume that the payment would be consistent with industry standards. Would that be fair? It would be in line with industry standards?
Yes, that's fair.
And I would note that a managing partner would generally be entitled, as I understand it, to about 3%. That is the industry standard, and I would note that the Brookfield Transition Fund 1 is a $15 billion fund. If Brookfield gets 20% of the profits, then 3% of that 20%, which is what could apply or would be in line with what Mr. Carney would stand to gain. He would stand to make tens of millions of dollars in future bonus pay from the Brookfield Transition Fund 1. Now,
I don't think that that's the right. You're not using the right math, because what is industry standard would be very much based on how large the fund is.
are you disputing that Mr. Carney stands to make millions, if not tens of millions of dollars?
Look, our investments may be very, very, very successful.
Yeah, so you're not disputing that.
I'm not saying one way or the other.
You're not disputing that. Now,
Certainly not a fact.
Thank you. So with respect to SEC filings, there are 141 investors in the Brookfield Global Transition Fund 1. You indicated that this committee has
Sorry, where do you get that information from?
SEC filings,
Okay.
and you that is the number that I have. If
Okay.
that number is not accurate, you can state the correct number.
I don't have that detailed information at hand.
But you indicated that, you seem to have some detailed information, because you told the committee moments ago that we have a list of all of the LPs, a list of all the investors.
Because I reviewed the annexure to the document that the Ethics Commissioner released publicly.
Well, what we have in the annexure is the reference to Mr. Carney's interest in that fund,
Yes.
reference to the fact that he is entitled to carried interest payments.
Yes.
What we don't have is a breakdown of what the LPs are in the fund. We don't have that.
The identity of the LPs?
We don't have that.
Okay.
So would you undertake to provide this committee with an identity of the LPs?
We don't disclose the identity of the LPs in every single fund that we have. I don't think that there's any reason to do so here.
Well, I think there is a reason to do so here, insofar as Mr. Carney stands to make millions, if not tens of millions of dollars from future bonus pay based upon the performance of that fund. Mr. Carney knows which public policy decisions might impact upon the fund's success, which in turn impacts his future bonus pay. These represent conflicts of interest or potential conflicts of interest. And at the present time, they're hidden conflicts of interest because Mr. Carney hasn't revealed what those holdings are, even though he helped set up the fund.
I misunderstood your question. You're asking me, what has the fund invested in?
I want to know what has the fund invested in, what the LPs are, what the holdings are. I want to know what's in the fund.
Okay, we're just confusing terminology. What I've told you is that in the annexure, the fund's holdings, each of the companies that BGTF1 holds is in the annexure.
Yeah, it's not.
Each company. And there's only one, by the way, that is in Canada. It's a company called Entropy. Entropy is held by BGTF1.
The holdings in the fund are not in the annex. So I'm just asking you to provide us a list of those holdings.
Let me be more clear. BGTF1 has invested in 20 businesses, roughly. And each of those businesses, their names, are listed in the annexure.
Who are the LPs?
Again, we don't disclose the identity of our LPs. And the identity of the LPs has nothing to do with the value that the fund will undertake. We manage the fund. We make the investment decisions. And those investment decisions have been made. We own those companies in that fund. If those companies do well and we do well in stewarding them and driving value through them, then BGTF1 will do well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
No, Mr. Carney.
I do.
And when was the last time you spoke with him, or texted with him, or emailed him, or exchanged letter mail with him?
I'm here to tell you that no one at Brookfield has communicated with the Prime Minister in relation to Brookfield or its business. That's what we're required to monitor. That's what I'm here to confirm.
My question is, when was the last time you communicated with the Prime Minister? And you're required to answer.
I'm happy to answer.
You obfuscated with your first response, sir, so I'm giving you the precision that you're required to answer the question, and it is directly when you last communicated with Mr. Carney.
Since he departed office, I have met with him only once.
And what was the nature of the meeting?
I contacted him to have a discussion about the rise in hate incidents, particularly anti-Semitism, across Canada.
And what was the date of the contact and the date of the meeting?
I contacted him a couple weeks before that, maybe more. The date of the meeting was Friday, October 3rd or 4th.
And did you meet in person or virtually?
I met in person with him. I took the afternoon off, and I came to Ottawa on my own dime.
Okay. And did you meet with him here or in the Prime Minister's office on Wellington?
I believe it's the Prime Minister's office.
Okay. And is that in this building, or is that in, because he's got a couple. So is that in this building here, or is that the one down the street?
On the corner.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. It doesn't hurt to have a Prime Minister financially tied to Brookfield's passive performance. Correct?
Again, I'm not here to opine on what is appropriate or not as it relates to considerations on how political figures, public office holders govern themselves.
So, Mr. Carney holds Brookfield linked assets in a so-called blind trust. Many of, and I'll say that, as you confirmed earlier, we know some of those are there because they're less liquid, I think was the term that you used. Is that right? Less liquid?
I would describe those as less liquid,
Okay,
yes.
so we know they're still there. And many of the portfolio companies that Brookfield has lobby the government. Now, Mr. Carney's compensation based on those assets held in trust rises when those companies do well. So when they lobby for an outcome that they're seeking, a favorable outcome for their business, and his government grants it, his personal financial position improves.
I think you should say it, though, because there's only one. There's only one company in that list that's in Canada.
Okay. And that company is?
Entropy.
If the Prime Minister sold all of his Brookfield-linked assets, instead of keeping them in trust, there would be no conflict to manage. Is that correct?
I think that's probably a correct statement, yes.
And so this is what we have isn't a Brookfield problem. The reason that you're here is because the Prime Minister has a financial interest in the performance of this company. And what we've said, what I've said, is that to restore Canadians' flagging confidence in democratic institutions, in their elected officials, that there ought to be a regime in place where party leaders who are represented in the House of Commons divest by way of sale of their controlled assets. And then we avoid the perception and we avoid the risk, and then there isn't a need to manage conflicts. And that's why we're here. We're looking for information because it's very opaque and Canadians don't understand. And they want to be able, it should be possible to hold two views at the same time. You want an investment in nuclear technology, but you also want to be certain that the decision was made because it's best for the country and it's not going to personally benefit any elected official.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Thank you. Monsieur Sari will